Hello.
Hello, welcome, sir.
Hi, Preeti, ma'am. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, sir. Students have also joined. I think we should start the session now.
Okay.
A very good afternoon to one and all present here. Today, we have with us Mr. Asim Trivedi. Sir is founder and CEO at Nova Sensa. Nova Sensa is a pioneering Indian company dedicated to electronic waste recycling. Sir is also a partner at Sujai Distributors and Consultants and co-founder at AUM Workspace. Sir has done masters in engineering management from Duke University, USA. He has a successful background in management consulting at Ernst& Young, where he worked for approximately 10 years. After that, his passion for sustainability and responsible waste management gave rise to an innovative e-waste recycling startup in India known as Nova Sensa. The company specializes in recycling PCBs and LIBs and aims to extract valuable elements from e-waste at the highest purity level, promoting a circular economy and bolstering in nation's self-sufficiency. Along with that, Sir is also actively involved in community initiatives as a board member of AGC Access and co-chair of the organization's diplomatic, legislative, and Israel outreach and intergroup committees. On behalf of Daulat Ram College, I extend a very warm welcome to Mr. Asim Trivedi. And Sir, please enlighten us with our students and our students with your ideas on e-waste.
Okay, thank you so much, Preeti. Thank you for such a kind introduction. And I'm very excited and happy to be here to see everyone and to meet virtually. As Preeti ji just mentioned, I run a company in electronic waste recycling. So we do focus on two aspects, which is lithium-ion batteries and printed circuit board, which I will touch upon in a second. How I want to structure this session is I do have a presentation which I can pull it up. That's a pitch deck which I have created for my company. I can share it and talk through it. But if you guys have any questions in between, please free to stop me, or if you want to wait till the end, that's also fine. But we can make it an interactive session. And whatever questions you have for this or something related to it, do let me know, because what the aim we have is to just raise awareness around electronic waste and then how each and everyone can help. So I can start with my story, how I got involved with it. So as Preeti ji just mentioned, I was in US for 11 years. I did my master's there, and I worked with Ernst& Young and did management consulting for financial firms. But then I had love for my country and I came back 1.5 years ago. And then the question was that where should I focus my energy? So I wanted to do something which was at the intersection of helping the society and at the same time making money, because as you all know, money is important. But if you can correlate and then work at that intersection, it makes you feel good that you're doing something great for your country. And also at the same time, solving a real world problem which you have. And I would get into it that how this thing benefits the country in itself and the state. I have a slide for that. So I decided to tackle electronic waste problem. And let's start with, yeah, sorry, you have a question? Okay, so let's start with what is electronic waste? Like, how do we define? So electronic waste is defined as something which runs on electricity or through electromagnetic wave, which you connect to the electrical circuit and it works, right? So it can be any kind of electronics. It can be from your laptop, smartphones to fridge, TVs, so on and so forth. So the whole world which we live is getting digitized, as we say. And because of this digitization, now we are surrounded by electronics. And this phenomenon is just going to keep compounding itself, because as we go through our life, you must have seen that how things are getting very fast paced. And whenever things are getting fast paced and you're short on time, the best friend you have is your electronics. How electronics are designed, that they are designed to save you time. And in most of the cases, if a person you does that work by themselves, it requires a lot of energy too by that person. So it also helps if you use a machine to do it, it reduces the amount of energy to do it. But this has resulted in a problem, which is electronic waste, because unfortunately, most of the electronics which we use has a certain amount of shelf life, or as you can say, product life. After a certain time, that electronic product either becomes obsolete by technology, or it's not able to serve what you bought it for. Or third, it is in a state where it cannot be repaired or used further. So those are called end of life electronics. And that's where company like mine and others recycling firms come in, because what we do, we take the end of life electronics and then we take it so that we can recycle it. What does recycling mean? So we first test whether the electronic can be used or refurbished and introduced back into the market. If it is not, it has really reached the end, then we shred it, and then we extract the valuable metals and precious metals. Apart from that, other byproducts out of it. So we are not just focused on taking stuff which is the byproducts and the precious metals, or everything which surrounds that electronic needs to get recycled, which is end-to-end process. Even the plastics which are there and resins, which is part of the electronics. So that's the basic definition of it. Do you guys have any questions? Otherwise, I can pull up my slide. Okay, sounds good. So let me just share my screen. See if I have this open. You guys can see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I'll not go on full screen so that I have to scroll and I can see other folks also here on my screen. So what I've done is that I've taken my pitch deck and I'm just going to go through it. Please feel free to stop me whenever you get a chance. As we talked about electronic waste, right? India is the third largest producer of electronics waste in the world. So we are ranked behind United States and China. This ranking, if you see 10 years ago, we were far behind. We were 17 or 18, but we have quickly caught up. And there are a bunch of factors which has contributed to it, which we'll cover in the subsequent slide. But how it stands, as you can see that in the past 5 years, the electronic consumption in India has increased 30% every year. This graph shows that. But the most concerning part and the most concerning aspect of it is that only 10% of it is being recycled using scientific method, right? And there is a thing which I want to highlight here is that what does this scientific versus non-scientific method is, right? So you must have seen that India has this sustainable culture embedded in us, right? Like we have these kabadiwalas or rag pickers, whatever you want to call them. They come to each locality and then they take all your old items, including people give them electronics, they take it and they recycle. And this is not a new phenomenon. It has been there for a very long time, right? But when it comes to newspaper and those things, it's easy to recycle because it does not require sophisticated technology. But when it comes to electronics, because in general, in order to make electronics, you need very high level electronics and sophistication to make it. So similarly, in order to extract metals and minerals out of it is also a complex process and which needs to be done in a safe way. What does that mean? They see in order to extract any minerals or metals, the easiest way is that you burn it. Whatever melts out, you can keep it, and whatever doesn't, then you can just throw it away and dispose it. But that has resulted in a bunch of problems, right? So when you're taking any electronic and you're not dealing it with a scientific way, and you're just burning it to take out whatever you need to. So first of all, it is creating air pollution because some of the electronics have heavy metals, mercury, and those toxic materials in it, which enters the air. That's first. Second, once you melt it, it also enters the soil. It seeps into the soil and water. We do know that out of the top 10 polluted cities in the world, India has 8 of them. Similarly, the top 10 polluted rivers, we have like 6 or 7 of them. So those things are very important for us to ensure that we need to reverse these things. So if we don't take care of electronics, which is a compounding problem, which we just saw that is ever increasing in a more scientific way, then it is just going to get worse and worse. And third is that whatever they are not able to recycle, because recycling does not mean that you just take out what is valuable for you and then throw the rest and get rid of it. That's not called recycling. Recycling has to be where you take something, you put it apart, and then you take care of each and every aspect of it. For example, when you take a cell phone, you recycle the battery, you recycle the screen, the cover, everything needs to get recycled. It's not just that you take the RAM, which is the most valuable, and then leave the rest and degrade the environment. And that's where a company like us, very important to solve that problem. So we need to ensure that the 2 million ton electronic waste which was generated, that 90% of it ended up polluting our environment. So this is something which we need to, first of all, take some time to digest, right? That what is happening with this 90% of the electronic waste which is generated and how it is degrading our environment. So we do understand that all these minerals and metals which go into creating any electronic product, most of them are getting mined either in India or we have to import those minerals from outside, right? So that is creating a lot of carbon footprint on Earth, because if you take a mine, take an ore, and then in order to identify that ore, you have to take that ore from the mine to the refining centers, and then where it gets refined. So the amount of energy which goes into producing is enormous, and it results in a lot of carbon emission, which is a huge problem. And we do understand that climate change is real. You guys must have witnessed it. I'm sitting in Delhi right now. Usually by the end of January, the weather used to clear up, right? And by February, it used to be very pleasant. But then everything, all the weather pattern has changed and has shifted. Only till like a couple of days ago that the weather has cleared up and now we are getting rid of winter. So it's the same pattern everywhere. You must have also read that because of climate change, certain places which would never get rain are getting flooded. For example, like we had flash floods all over the northern part of India. In Himachal, it was bad, and other parts also in Uttaranchal, where a lot of people suffered because of it. In countries where there are water scarce, Libya, for example, they suffered from very heavy flood. And Libya is considered a water scarce country. So this is showing that how things are moving because climate change is affecting. And the biggest cause of climate change is carbon emission, because this is something which we learned in our school, I think in seventh or eighth grade, that that ozone layer which is there gets affected by some of the gases which produce the ozone. It's because there are certain gases which produce heat from Earth, and it's the ozone layer is not able to help escape it. And when it doesn't escape, it results in heating of the Earth. So these gases are methane, sulfur, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen. Hydrogen is the least, but then sulfur, carbon dioxide, and methane, these are the biggest player when it comes to carbon emission and then degradation of our ozone layer. When the ozone layer gets degraded, then the amount of heat which should escape from our atmosphere decreases, and it results in heating of the whole environment. And hence the temperature around the world has increased by 1%. So just moving on from that, we think that this is something which can be solved, but there is also money to be made in this, right? So you cannot get into a business where you cannot make money. So you're helping that, but at the same time, like if you do it the scientific way, what you can do is you have a technology which helps you recover the sustainable critical elements out of it. Then since it's end-to-end process, it helps in reversing the action of climate change. And I'll cover that in subsequent slide. So this is what I was covering through. Another thing which is important to note here, that most of the electronic waste in India is being generated by the urban centers. So what we have seen in our research, that 65 cities in India, which have been highlighted here, generate more than 60% of it, and there are 10 states which generate 70% of electronic waste. So the generation of electronics and the waste is more concentrated in the cities and the urban centers. And if we solve that problem in the urban centers, then that would also help in solving this problem from the root cause of it. So what are the major growth drivers for it, which we just introduced? So the first one is cell phone. I want to talk about smartphone because this revolution is relatively new, and then we all went through it. We have seen it with our own eyes how smartphone has become ubiquitous. They are present all over. Everybody is using it. It's not just the cities, but in villages too. There are certain factors which have helped. The first one is that India has the cheapest data rate in the world. So the amount you pay to keep a phone and use data is one of the cheapest, if not the cheapest in the world. That helps a lot because what you need to do is that just make one-time investment into your phone. Once you have that, then it becomes your center for every information you want. It helps you connect with your loved ones, but it also helps you connect with the world because now you have access to internet. Once you have access to internet through apps, uh, a lot of people who are not even literate, they can start using these apps because now they are voice enabled. For example, YouTube, and there are certain features in WhatsApp where you can send voice messages to each other, which has helped in the propagation of smartphones. So smartphone earlier when it came out used to be something where most of the business people would use. And I'm talking about things which were 20, 25 years ago in India, but now everybody uses it. And it's something where I have seen that most of the people have now more than one smartphone. So India has become the second highest like user and consumption of smartphones. And we are also the second largest producer. Based on our research, within 5 years, we would be number one because till now, only 60% penetration is there. So that means 40% of our countrymen are still not using it. We are a young nation. We also think that the generation Z, which is the next generation after millennials, they are more tech savvy. And then once they grow up, they are growing up with cell phones. So the use of electronics would exponentially increase because of that. Out of these 659 million smartphones which are in use, 25% of are getting discarded. And that's electronic waste right there. With cell phones, there are multiple factors which lead to people changing their phone. First of all is the pace with which the technology is changing. You have from people moving to 3G to 4G, now we have introduction of 5G, and that bandwidth helps you to access apps which requires a lot of data. So that's first. Second is the technology in itself running the smartphone and the cameras in it and the other features which go around it, because there is so much competition in the smartphone market that every other or every 6 to 3 months, you have a new product being launched by someone or the other, and then the other players in the market have to match it, otherwise they would go out of vogue. So, and then the third one is the batteries of cell phone. You must have seen that lithium-ion batteries which are in the phone, that after a certain number of charge and discharge, it stops holding charge. And that's where you either replace the battery or you start thinking about changing the phone in itself. So what we have seen that usually people change their phone every 4 years on an average. Just give me a second. I have someone I need to. Hello? Yeah, sorry about that. I just got a call. Then the second one is that India has the fastest growing electronic market in the world. And what does that mean? there are different sectors in industry which India has, right? We have agri-tech, we have agriculture, we have pharmaceutical, then we have electronics. If you dial back the clock 10 years ago, the electronic sector was a very small part of our economy, but due to a lot of initiative taken by the government and subsidies and help, the electronic sector has boomed, and it has become the fastest growing, not just in India, globally. It has gone through unprecedented growth of 15% in the past 5 years. And then what we have seen due to projections by the government and the private players, that it is slated to become a $300 billion US dollar market by 2026, which is just 2 years from now. So it's a huge market. And one of the biggest initiative which has helped with this is Make in India, which has brought down the price and a lot of subsidies given by the government. There are a lot of local players in every aspect which we can see, like from smartwatches to smartphones to tablets, so on and so forth. They are across the board. So that's the second one. Third is the share of middle class has doubled. So as you can see that when into 2004 to 5, only 14% were classified as middle class. Right, middle class mean people who have taken a leap from living below poverty, but then they have a certain steady income where they can think about spending on recreational activities and things which makes their life easier. So the rise of middle class in India is just unparalleled. The only country which could match it was China, between 1978 to till 2000 under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping and the subsequent premier there. So India is taking the same trajectory a little bit later because Chinese, they opened their market in 1978 as opposed to India, which opened the market in 1991. But if we go by the same trend, we are projected to have 63% of our country under middle class, which is a huge, huge chunk, because our country has a population of 1.4 billion. So you guys can do the math, 63% of 1.4 billion is a huge chunk. It's literally more than the population of Europe and some aspects America combined. So these guys would create a market, would be so big that the Indian companies would not have to go to some other country to sell. And India would become one of the largest consumer market in the world. So keeping that in mind, the electronics market and making sure that when the electronics end, we should be taking care of it. And there are mechanisms in place to ensure that we are doing the right things with our end of life electronics. Then the last aspect is rapid urbanization. And the reason for that is that India is considered or was considered as an agrarian economy, where majority of the people, around 90% of the people, were involved in agriculture or activities related to agriculture. But that has shifted since 1991, and especially in the last 15 to 20 years. Why there has been a push to the cities? Because when people, they get educated and then they want to make money, there are certain jobs, certain kind of job which are only available in the cities. And that's why a lot of people are moving from city centers, from villages to city centers. And then there are a lot of infrastructure projects also which are in the pipeline, which government is initiating, which forces people from maybe the laborer, semi-skilled, from villages to the city centers or the industrial park near the city centers. So that number is also shared here. So all these factors combined, what it shows us that the per capita consumption of electronics in India is just gonna grow at an exponential rate in the next 15 to 20 years. So we need to take a step back and think that right now in itself, 90% of our electronics are not getting recycled the right way. So what if we just wait on this problem and don't try to solve the problem while it is just growing, how bad it would get? Not just for in terms of the economical loss, but then the loss on the environment would be catastrophic. So I'll stop here. If you guys have any questions, I'll take it. I guess there are no questions. Am I audible to you guys, or am I just talking to myself?
Yes, you are, sir. I think we can have question and answer session at the end of the
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, and then yeah, so this is a picture I took. This is a picture from Seelampur. Seelampur is in Delhi. Uh, it's around the Yamuna, near Rakshadam temple, which is considered the biggest electronic waste informal market. The Kabadi wala market, we call it informal market technically. So as you guys can see, that in order to extract valuables from what they could, they have taken stuff out, but then it has resulted in more pollution and degradation of the environment than it should help. And that's where it's important that when we look at our electronics, we need to understand that how much carbon footprint it has in order to recreate it. And if we recycle it the right way, how much can we bring it back into the economy? Right? Because if you take any electronics and if you recycle the right way, based on what we have studied, that the energy and matter are interrelated through E is equal to mc squared. Energy once created cannot be destroyed. So whatever a mineral is there can never be destroyed, right? It just changes form by going through chemical reaction. So we use that same phenomenon while we take that end of life electronic and extract all the minerals out of it so that we can bring it back into the economy, which is circular economy and sustainability. So it's important for us to look at our end of life electronics and think that, hey, this is something which can become like what it is in this picture. Or if you give it to a responsible recycler, it can come out as 100% pure minerals and metals, which can go back into the industry to create electronics again. So first of all, you're stopping the immediate degradation of the environment, and you're also stopping the use of minerals and ores coming out of from mines, because based on our research, the amount of energy required to extract minerals and metals through recycling is 1/10 than what the amount goes in mining it from ore. Sorry, from ore when you get it from mines. So let's just look into it. What are these different things? As I touched upon it earlier, the toxic e-waste exposure can cause a lot of respiratory issues, skin problem. And you must have seen that the cancer patient and the number of cancer patient in India has skyrocketed. And it's not just people from the wealthy part of the society. There are people who are not that strong financially also getting it. And the reason is because the toxic water, the toxic air, and the toxic soil, all this combined has resulted in this very difficult problem, which India is just getting to realize is about cancer and the consequences of it. Then this particular picture, and I keep pointing it to it because it's real and you guys can go to Seelampur and see this yourself. This water is directly going into Yamuna. Yamuna is considered one of the sacred rivers for us. And it's one of the most important river because it flows through an area which is considered water scarce, where we get our rain. Since we are in Delhi, we can talk about the majority of the rain is just in the 2 to 3 weeks of monsoon if we get it right. And otherwise, most of the time, our city is high and dry, and we get like just scattered rain here and there. So this river has helped a lot historically, and that's where Delhi became such an important city. But now what we are doing is that we are taking that and we are literally destroying it by putting all the toxins into the water. Water in a lake is a different story, but water in a river is an entirely different animal, because when you look at a river, it is a living organism. And why do I say it a living organism? Because it's always on the move and it spreads across a very vast piece of land. where it touches upon a lot of different areas and different parts where it goes through. So when you put toxins into the river, usually river used to have this property when we were not overloading it with toxins like this, that every 20 kilometers it will self-clean. But now it has gone away. With the amount of toxins we are putting in, this river has literally become so toxic you cannot go and drink water directly out of it. You cannot even take a dip if you really want to. It is so toxic. So this river, the water is being carried from here till where it drops into the ocean, and from the ocean also it's getting interconnected to all the water bodies around India and on Earth. So we need to understand that rivers are very, very important source for fresh water, and fresh water is what we can use directly to solve a lot of our water needs. And water is something which is in our body also 70%. Then this third point is about high levels of heavy metal near e-waste site, which has been detected. A lot of study has been done. So you would see that where people are doing electronic waste recycling through unsafe methods, unscientific methods, the amount of heavy metals, which results in a lot of health issues, which are being covered here. Specifically, skin cancer, a lot of other kinds of cancer, and respiratory diseases across all age groups has been seen, not just in Selampur, but wherever this kind of activity is going on. Right? We do also need to understand that when it rains, all these toxins, they overflow and then they also pollute the topsoil. And we use the topsoil to grow our grains and vegetables, which we eat and digest. And in essence, we are eating toxins without even realizing it. So the water is the biggest cause. Then it results in pollution of the soil, topsoil. And then the last, which is the most important thing which we suffer through in Delhi, is that how polluted our cities are. Yeah, so I'm going to just stop there so that I can have a more interactive session. So if you guys have any questions, just let me know.
But I would just like to ask, like you were showing this slide of Selampur. So of course, the dump must be having all that stuff only, which is not having any valuables in it. So is there any way to recycle it, like, because this is almost wastage, that's why it's dumped there.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I would like to first highlight that in recycling, nothing is waste. You just need to have the right technology to take care of it and recycle it. So what these guys do, the informal sector, they just go for the most valuable aspect of it because they just don't have the technology to recycle the whole thing. But even with the most valuable, since the concentration of metal is so low that they are not even able to get to that. So at that point, what they do is whatever is available, whatever they can get just by burning through or through unscientific method, they get it, and rest, they just dump it in the environment or landfill. And that's what I was trying to show with this picture, that when we do recycling, like if you send me your phone, if you send me any electronic, if you see what comes out of my factory, a plant, is just nothing comes out of it. There is no discharge. And there's a slide which shows it. Let me just put it up again. Like, so here, so through this, it's a closed loop process that we have no discharge coming out of our industry. Like the reagents and the chemicals which we use, we top it up again and we recycle it. Second, the whatever amount of metals or minerals are there, in whatever concentration, we identify it through a machine. And once we get to know, we have methods to extract it. So let's take this example. You say that it has 13% aluminum, 14% copper, 1% palladium, right? So we would take out 13% copper, we'll take out 12% aluminum, and we'll also take out 1% palladium. But when you give it to the informal sector, since they don't have the technology to do it, they would just go for the highest concentration one, which they can just take it out by melting it. But it is not the right way to do it, because once you do it, if you're burning something, it has a lot of plastics and heavy metals which enters into the air, water, and soil at the same time, which you just saw. So if the recycling is done right, every part of cell phone, I'm just taking the example of cell phone because it's something which is right next to you and you can relate to it. If you give it to the right recycler, every aspect of it would get recycled and nothing would end up in a landfill or would end up in a river or riverbed, because there are methods to do it. The Indian e-waste law is very strict if followed right, right? And that's where people like you, young leaders who are there, who are forward thinking, there is so much love for our country. We do want to make sure that when we go to another country, the biggest difference we see is how dirty is our country. Like you can go across the board. Like I have been to very poor countries in South America, to Nicaragua, to like other places, Colombia. These countries are going through a lot of tough time. You also go to Thailand, these countries, but they are much more cleaner than India. And the reason for that is that we need to get very aware of like how valuable the waste is and how to deal with it the right way. And this can only be done by us, the newer generation, who can raise awareness, understand that this waste does not need to be like that, the picture I showed. It can be a clean river, and at the same time, we are using our end of life electronic to help our economy. Because India, even though is a huge country, you guys can look it up. The government has designated around 30 metals or minerals as critical minerals, right? And majority of them they are designated as critical because we are importing majority of them, because there are certain minerals which we have in abundance, but then there are a lot of critical ones which we don't have and we have to import. Once you import these minerals from outside, it creates a lot of pressure on the economy, because you are giving up your freedom and you are going out in the market and getting it and sourcing it from outside. So that can also be reversed now with your electronics. If we are taking out all the minerals and metals out of it and putting it back into the economy, then we become self-sufficient. It becomes another source of metal into the country rather than buying it from outside and paying tariff and being dependent on someone. We are taking our waste and then converting into something valuable and then helping our economy by introducing into it. Right. So yeah, there's critical metal security, which you are aware of. So did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Anything else? Like you guys have any questions?
Girls,
Sir, I
if
have
you
a
have any
question.
question, yeah, please ask.
Yes, thank you. I have a question, sir. What I have seen that every day the new technology is coming in the market. For example, the 5G phones. So we people are forced to, change their 4G phones with the 5G. So don't you think this is another burden that we are putting on our country in the form of e-waste?
Well, that's a good question, ma'am. But you have to think from the perspective of technology. Technology is such a thing, right, that it is bound to change. As we go along, things are changing, and as our needs change, how the capability changes, hence the technology changes. So moving from 4G to 5G, it is creating a burden on the economy, as you just said, but it is also creating an opportunity. Because if you get stuck to 4G, let me actually give you an anecdote here, right? So what happened that we used to have 3G across the world. Then this 4G came along. What was the benefit of 4G? 4G was that it would enable us to operate a lot of high-speed applications on our cell phone. For example, ride-hailing apps like Uber, Ola, like we would have apps where we can go through social media feed with a lot of videos in it, right? So with that, the countries which moved over to 4G the fastest, those countries were able to take out apps which were game changers. And those guys who took out apps, they are billionaires right now. For example, Facebook, Uber, right? Ola guy did copy it, but he's still a billionaire, right? So what I'm trying to say is that the technology is bound to change and become more efficient. And with that, it is actually beneficial for the country that we don't get left behind, that we follow the latest in the world. Like we should have and we should aim to have the best in the world in India. That why should our youngsters or why should me not use the best technology available in the world, right? So because now with onset of 5G, you would have different apps which would help you do very difficult computing on your app, which would require laptops for initially, right? So you must have seen those virtual reality goggles and stuff. That requires a lot of data. 4G cannot help with that. You need a 5G phone so that you can wear that goggles and do your work. So with the onset of this, things would change. But answer that question, if we ensure, if we become very aware that once my cell phone has reached end of life, it should not be sitting in my shelf, that I would give it to someone some other day. You're not going to give it. There is a rule that if you have something lying around in your room and if you have not touched it for 2 months, that means you're not never going to use it, unless it's like your passport or something, right? I'm just talking about things which you were using and then you just let it go. Electronics in general. So if you have a phone and you bought a new phone and you keep the old phone in your drawer, so you're putting a pressure on the economy by not recycling it. Because if you give it to people like us or any of my competitor or any of the person who is doing recycling the right way, they are going to take that phone and then take all the critical minerals and all the plastics and everything out of it and then put it back into the economy, because we got to take the minerals and then we'll give it to the cell phone manufacturers that, hey, here you go. Here's the copper, here's the aluminum, here's the plastic, here's the screen. You go and use it for the next phone. Because the technology, underlying technology is changing, but the components going into it are not changing that much. So we need to ensure that we realize that doing recycling right would not create burden on the economy, would help the economy. There is a very good term for that, circular economy, right? You're taking something, you're using it, then you're giving it to the recycler, they are introducing back into the economy. But if you take that phone and you shove it in your Almira or something and you just forget about it and think that I'll give it to someone, then that is a burden on the economy. But I am from the perspective that India should not lag behind on the latest technology. If 5G is there, we should also have 5G at the same time, so that we can also come up with next generation apps and not left behind and use someone else's app or copy it. Any other question? You guys have any other questions?
So like you said that we can give it our old phones or e-waste to your company. So how do you collect this from the customers? Like generally, what we do is that we exchange our old phones for the new ones. But for our laptops and the wires which are there at our homes, we just give them to kabadi walas, and we don't know how they recycle it.
Yeah, that's a very good question, ma'am. I think the easiest way to do it, that we wanted to do this session in person also, and if you guys are interested, we can come and do it in person, where we wanted people from the college to get involved. We do want to identify as someone and sustainability champion from each college, where we can raise awareness, because it's very important for me that recycling is one aspect of it, but raising awareness and understanding that how important recycling the right way is through next generation and people who are in college, because the amount of exposure and amount of with social media, the decimation of the information is so easy that we need to leverage that to our own advantage. I've been in talk with a lot of universities where we want to install bins where you can drop off your electronic waste, and people who are dropping it off, we want to issue a certificate to them that what they have done, the amount of carbon emission they have reduced, and the help on the economy they have done. And we in that bin, you can drop it off, and then we can also create a drive where we can designate it as the e-waste recycling day, and where we go and encourage students to come drop off their electronics, and where we issue them, as I said, a certificate. And then it's not just in your university you can do it. You can also go and make your family members aware that when you're doing it the right way, how it is helping the environment and the economy. So
I think we can look forward to it, right?
yeah, that's something I would have to
Okay.
talk to Preeti ma'am, you more, that how we can set up a drop-off point, how we can assign a sustainability champion, how can we have an e-waste day where we talk about it, we take a laptop apart where I can show all the students that what are inside, like what are the different aspects to it,
Right,
how
right.
we are recycling it, what is the end product of recycling. Those things are very important. And then just appreciating good work, right? Giving out certificate for all the good job. And we call it the sustainability champion certificate, where people who are doing the right way, they can take credit of how much carbon footprint they have reduced and how much carbon emission they have reduced by each laptop they have brought back and gotten it recycled the right way. But that's something I'll have to discuss with you, and we'll have to sit down. Yeah.
Sir, any kind of health hazard while recycling the e-waste you must have observed?
Yeah, very good question, ma'am. With electronics, Indian government in 2011 came out with their e-waste law, first e-waste law, and then subsequently they have improved upon it. The newest one is from 2022, went into effect in 2023, where they have banned the use of heavy metals and mercury in the electronics. But ma'am, as you just pointed out, that the electronics which were manufactured before that, that also bans from importing electronics which uses heavy metals and mercury, because it's very toxic for you. But anything before that, they were using it, right? And especially in the soldering aspect of it. So when you're dealing with that, it is essential that we do it the right way. We do it through the scientific method rather than doing it unscientifically, because if the person working on that electronic waste gets exposed to it, their health is at risk. And that's what we want to minimize it. So most of these health hazards can be rectified or remediated if you do it the right way. And what is the right way is that instead of burning, there are different methods to deal with these heavy metals. And that's what we are doing. It's called hydrometallurgy rather than pyrometallurgy. Instead of burning, you shred the electronic waste. And once you shred it, you dip it at the room temperature into reagents, and it just extracts all the heavy metals and metals out of it, rather than once you burn it, it goes into the air. And when we do e-waste recycling, there are a bunch of regulations which you have to follow when you're doing it the right way, where the discharge, if there is any air discharge or chemical discharge, is benign to the environment. You have to ensure that.
Thank you, sir. Any other question from the audience? Girls?
So is this just a girls' college? That's,
Yes, sir.
oh, I didn't know that.
It's a girls' college, sir.
Okay, I feel special.
Preeti, over to
Okay.
you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for this invaluable talk. The idea of e-waste recycling, first of all, and then the way you explained everything was really remarkable. The topic is very important indeed in today's pretext, since we can't just throw away these devices in landfills, as you yourself said, that if we want to protect our health and environment, it has to be recycled properly. And you rightly said that recycling doesn't just mean to extract whatever is valuable for us, but how much we can bring back to economy.
Yeah,
And yeah, your talk has surely forced all of us to think in the direction of, first of all, reducing the e-waste. And yes, your venture also has opened a new field. And I'm sure many young minds have been encouraged to opt for a recycling as a career option also.
yeah,
So
no,
thank you so much.
yeah. One thing which I forgot to mention, that I'm working with the National Institute of Open Schooling, where we are launching an e-diploma course on electronic waste, where people can learn about electronic waste. That's a different thing, but also see it as a career option, because I am also looking for people who are engineers, who are marketing folks, who are interested in this, who want to join my company or the other recyclers, and then be part of this revolution, because it's a nascent industry, but very important. And this is where you are helping the country solving a real world problem of sustainability and encouraging circular economy. It's not something which is close to the heart of our Prime Minister using the Life initiative he launched. But if you read through the Sustainable Development Goals of United Nations, out of the 17 goals, e-waste recycling hits on 9 of them. So there'll be very few sustainability things which you can do, where out of 17, you're hitting more than 50% of the UN Sustainability Development Goal. So it's remarkable how much impact right recycling can do. And at the same time, it is very scientific in nature. So the learning is also very immense, because the nature of electronics keeps changing. So you have to do a lot of research and development. Angle is to there. You can file patents around it. And then it is also exciting because you have to go raise awareness, talk to people, get that electronic waste, help people understand that how you can take care of it in the right way. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. At the end, I would like to request everyone to switch on their camera so that we can have a photograph. Dr. Darshan, will you be please able to take the photograph, because my laptop is not working properly?
Recording in progress.
Okay.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. I think प्रीति हम कर सकते हैं इसको.
I will end the meeting.
Hmm.
Okay.
Thank you all.